Jam-packed episode of Carving It Up Live on tap for tonight. Gonna start off with carving up the context, which I normally do about a half hour into the show, but you're in for a treat because we're starting the show with that, talking about Baker Mayfield and why his resurgence over the last few years after a big-time comeback win against the Texans the other night is just more evidence for a key rule that we see, especially in the modern era, for quarterbacks and franchise quarterbacks, which Baker obviously is. Talk about that. Also get to the Chargers. Are they showing themselves to be Super Bowl contenders in the AFC, despite the fact that Herbert's never won a playoff game? Get to that, why I think they are. Alfred Parsard Jr., friend of mine, friend of the show. He'll be stopping by from the Metropolitan Report to discuss the Mets' recent slide. They've won a couple games in a row, but can the Mets get into the playoffs and maybe make a run like they did last year to the NLCS? Talk about that. Also get to Bryson's best 10, my top 10 teams in the National Football League as we go into week 3, and then predict Dolphins and Bills at the end of today's show. Loaded episode on tap of Carving It Up Live. So let's drop the beat, baby. Here we go. Hey, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on YouTube as well as on Facebook, Instagram, X. It's exciting to be here. I'm Bryson Carver, and listen, we've got a special guest joining, Alfred Parsard Jr. He's stopping by in a half hour to talk New York Mets, and you might be thinking, Mets. You don't talk baseball on the show much? Yes, but Alfred is a friend of the show. Listen, we'll be talking a lot of baseball as we get in the next couple of weeks, as we get closer and closer toward the postseason. My Red Sox, I've got my Sox hat right here. I may wear it during this segment. I may not, just because of how our offense is falling asleep as of late. So definitely excited to talk about the Mets and get some Jets questions in there because Alfred is, unfortunately for him, a long-suffering Jets fan. Bryson's best 10. Listen, this is the first week thus far. We're only in week 3 where not one single team on Bryson's best 10 is going to be where they were a week ago, which of course by definition means new number 1 on Bryson's best 10. You're going to want to stay tuned for that. Carving up the context, which we're going to lead off with in just a second. Chargers are contenders. Bills, Dolphins predictions. I got to say, the line just keeps coming down. It was Buffalo minus 13.5 the day after the Sunday games, and now it's down to Buffalo minus 11.5. So people, the betting market is definitely liking Miami and the points in the spot. Again, division rival, double-digit dogs. Seems to be trending that way. We'll see how it plays out. I'll predict that game at the end of today's show. I do have a bold prediction regarding that one. But first, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers won a big-time Monday Night Football game the other night against the Houston Texans, 2019, in what started off as a fireworks show. I kind of missed the start of the game because I was at the end of Monday's show in here. Sit down and watch the rest of it, and it's a defensive stalemate. Right? Like there's special teams plays being made by Houston, and then Nick Chubb breaks up a long run. It's like, oh, here we go. Texans are going to win this game. I was high on the Texans come in, and I'll touch on them in about 10 minutes or so. But hey, they're at home. As I said on the show, Houston is a very underrated home field advantage, especially for a big nationally televised Monday Night Football game. 0-1, you want to get a W. And I'm thinking, okay, here we go. But then I sit back and remember, I'm like, oh, shoot. Baker, touchdown Baker is on the other side. The man who is as clutch of a quarterback as we've seen in the NFL, obviously leads a game-winning drive last week to beat Atlanta, leads a game-winning drive this week, capped off by a Rachaad White touchdown at the end to get the job done. And before we sort of go into the crux of what I want to discuss, normally carving up the context, we do that segment a half hour into Wednesday's show, but because Alfred's coming on, I want to give plenty of time for him and then get to Bryson's best 10. We're just going to start the show off with it. So, as the head coach of the Colorado Buffaloes, primetime Deion Sanders says, give me my theme music. On this week's edition of Carving Up the Context, I wanted to talk about Baker Mayfield, and not just Baker's journey individually, so to speak, but more so a truth that we have seen in the NFL play itself out over and over and over, particularly in the last decade or so. And we're going to use Baker as part of kind of like a case study, as a like before and after type of deal. So Baker, if you look at what he's done the last few years with Tampa Bay, he has been indisputably a top 10 quarterback. I mean, those numbers are at worst top 4. He's easily top 10. But Baker Mayfield since the start of last year, second in touchdown passes, third in pass yards per game, third in completion percentage, fourth in passer rating. Obviously, he and the Bucs have won the division the last 2 years in a row, and I have to imagine they are the overwhelming favorites to do that again. Maybe Atlanta gives them a little bit of a push, but safe to say Carolina and New Orleans aren't exactly going to give Tampa Bay any reason to fear them in the division standing. So it's going to be a two-horse race, Tampa, Atlanta. I think we all think Tampa's going to end up winning the division. Some injuries on the defense. Offensive line's a little bit beat up, but I think they'll be fine in the long run, in large part because they have number 6, Mr. Baker, touchdown maker, as their quarterback. But it wasn't always like this. And if you go back, I would not encourage you to do so. I would not encourage you to do that. But if you go back a few years, recently as 2021, 22, yours truly was not exactly the biggest Baker Mayfield fan on planet Earth. I was like, he's a little bit smaller than you'd like. The arm strength doesn't necessarily blow you away. There's times he came into the season a little bit out of shape. The temperament was not what you would want it to be as a franchise quarterback. And oh, by the way, he happened to play in one of the two most desolate quarterback-thirsty franchises, them and the Jets, in the NFL. I'm, of course, talking about the Cleveland Browns. And Baker, given what he's done since 2023, but particularly since last year when he was, through 41 touchdown passes during the season. When you look at what he did last year, look at how he's starting the season in 2025. 2 game-winning drives against a good Atlanta team and a Houston, Texas team on the road, Monday Night Football. They have won the AFC South the last 2 years. Like Houston, very real defense. We know it. Derek Stingley and Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter and all those guys bring to the table. To'o. But this is a guy who, through large stretches, I know he had a good rookie season, broke the rookie record at the time for touchdown passes. I know 2020, he helped the Browns get to the playoffs, but if you look back, most of that was defensive running game with Baker playing a little bit of a game manager role. You kind of look at Baker's numbers when the Browns get hot from like midseason on, yards per attempt go down, or no, let's say yards per attempt go down, but attempts go down. Kevin Stefanski, first-year head coach at the time in Cleveland's like, yeah, we're going to roll with Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, Myles Garrett in that defense. And by the way, it got them all the way to Kansas City in the divisional round. It obviously worked. But if you look at Baker's numbers in Cleveland, he was, do we have the stat? Matter of fact, let me double check and make sure we've got that number because I don't want to, I don't want to mislead the audience. Let's make sure we can get that graphic in here. Hang on just a second, folks. Do we have it? Okay, I guess we don't have it. Either way, Baker, off the top of my head, it was like 92 touchdowns, 56 picks, a passer rating of like 89, like fine. Like an 89 passer rating is not bad, but for a guy who was the first overall pick, you'd like that to be a little bit higher. It's kind of like what I've talked about with Trevor Lawrence. By all accounts, and certainly relative to his draft class, he's been fine. I mean, he's had moments, got him to the playoffs. I thought he wasn't as bad as folks like to portray last week, but Trevor certainly has not lived up to being the number 1 overall pick in the draft, in large part for the same reason Baker didn't. Because he went to a poorly run franchise. And Cleveland, poorly run is a compliment these days. They're one of the most disastrous franchises in all of sports. And then he goes to Carolina, and it's a disaster, poorly run franchise. Then goes to what I call quarterback rehabilitation school, also known as the Los Angeles Rams, has that nice 3-4 game stretch at the end of 2022. Remember that 99-yard drive on that TNF game against the Raiders, and has a big game against the Broncos on Christmas and plays well. Gets himself a contract in Tampa, wins the job over Kyle Trask, and he's been the franchise quarterback since. I think it is safe to say Baker is due for a pretty good raise this upcoming 2026 offseason. I think the Bucs front office is going to have to get ready to pay up because he's going to want that bag, and he absolutely has earned that. But it goes to a core rule. Man, in the NFL, unless you are just an all-time, we have never seen this before type of talent, at least 75% of your success is hinging on where you land. And we can use a few examples. So when Jared Goff was drafted number 1 overall by the Los Angeles Rams, actually the first ever pick since the Rams moved back to Los Angeles, out of Cal, it was like, okay, good pocket thrower, accurate. He was generally regarded as the best QB prospect in that 2016 class. He goes number 1 overall to a team that had not won a playoff game in over a decade, that had just relocated, had a head coach in Jeff Fisher, who, nice man, but I'm not exactly sure why Jeff Fisher still had the job in St. Louis, then Los Angeles. And as a rookie, Jared Goff was one of the worst quarterbacks you will ever see. So in 7 starts, this is what he did. I mean, it's bad. 5 touchdowns, 7 picks. He barely threw for 150 yards a game, barely completed over 50% of his throws, and a passer rating of 63. I mean, atrociously bad. And then in 2017, he gets McVay. And then 4 years later, he's traded to the Detroit Lions. And he gets Ben Johnson. And he gets Dan Campbell in that great Lions culture. And Jared Goff since then has been an excellent quarterback. He's been in that top 10 discussion. 97 passer rating, 66% completion. TD to INT ratio is quite good. All of those things. Different quarterback. Where Jared Goff landed mattered. If they had botched the head coach hiring in 2017, had the Los Angeles Rams done that, I think it's safe to say Jared Goff is not a starting quarterback in the NFL today, because he probably would have stunted his development even more. He needed the good talent around him, and not just that, but more so the coaching and the schematics of a McVay, of a Ben Johnson later on in Detroit. We would not have seen Jared Goff become what he has become, which is a very productive quarterback. Went to a Super Bowl, has quarterbacked 2 teams to being the number 1 seed in his career. Another example is a guy who was in Baker's draft class, taking 2 slots after him, Sam Darnold. I mentioned that the Browns and the Jets are the most disastrously run quarterback franchises in the NFL. Well, look at Sam Darnold with the Jets. He's pretty bad. Only 6 more touchdowns than picks. Barely over 200 passing yards, not even 60% completion, and a passer rating of 78. Like, okay, I guess better than Goff's rookie numbers, but still, Jets fans could not wait for it to move on. I think they might have started like 0-11, 0-12 or something crazy, I forget, and put themselves in position to get the second pick in that 2021 draft. Couldn't wait to move on. And then Darnold goes to Carolina, and it doesn't work so well, and then he's in San Francisco as Purdy's backup, doesn't get a lot of action. And then he steps in Minnesota in 2024. And since then, if we can show Sam, since then, he's been an excellent quarterback. 37-14 touchdown to interception ratio. That'll work. 250 pass yards per game, 66% completion, passer rating over 100, ladies and gentlemen. He won 14 games in Minnesota last year. And as for Seattle, we'll see how it plays out. I'm not that high on the Seahawks, not terribly high on Darnold's fit there, but you give Sam Darnold, Kevin O'Connell, and Justin Jefferson and those weapons, like, oh, okay, that's the Sam Darnold with the big arm and the mobility and the physicality that we saw at USC. Not the guy who the Jets did everything they could, Adam Gase, to try and ruin. So if you look at multiple examples, and by the way, Carson Wentz is kind of an example in the other direction. Carson Wentz was drafted by, I think we all see today, a very well-run franchise in the Philadelphia Eagles. If we can look at Carson Wentz's numbers, I mean, the pass rating isn't great, but the man was like an MVP candidate in 2017. He was quarterbacking them to the number 1 seed before the injury. 113 pass touchdowns, 50 picks, almost 250 yards a game. Completion percentage not great, 62%. Pass rating of 89. Like, this was a guy who showed you the upside, showed you the talent, probably wins MVP in 2017, if not for the injuries, and Doug Peterson and Alshon Jeffrey and Blunt and those weapons and the defense. And since then, since the Philadelphia Eagles move on, and by the way, they've gone to 2 Super Bowls, won 1. If we can look at Carson Wentz since then, not great. I mean, completion percentage and rating are basically the same. TD INT ratio, fine, I guess, for a backup, and 180 passing yards per game. This is a guy who choked Indianapolis' playoff appearance at the end of 2021, went to Washington in 22. That didn't work. He was with the Rams briefly, and then with Kansas City, and now he's with the Vikings. I think he's breaking a record. He's starting for like 6 teams, or 5 or 6 teams, or something crazy. I think it's 6, yeah, that Carson Wentz has started for, which might be an NFL record. It's up there with Ryan Fitzpatrick, at least. This was a guy who was completely reliant on the system around him, on the talent around him. And if he went to anything short of that, was not the same player. That's the story for most great quarterbacks. I mean, unless you're a Peyton Manning who goes to Indianapolis when the Colts were a disaster, within 2 years they're winning 13 games. That's rare. I mean, Tom Brady, 6th-round pick, so a little bit of a different context there, but the New England Patriots weren't exactly world beaters. Tom steps in, plays the game manager role they needed him to be, win a Super Bowl his first year as a starter. Within 5 years, he's the best quarterback in football. It's a discussion between him and Peyton, but Brady by 07 certainly is in that discussion, if not the top of that discussion. Where you land, unless you're an all-time legendary talent, like I think Mahomes is that. I think Mahomes would have been great virtually anywhere. Didn't hurt to get Andy Reid. I think Josh Allen is a prime example. Like, okay, Josh is an all-time talent, but if Josh doesn't get Brian Dable and the stability of a Sean McDermott system who had just been to the playoffs 2 years before that, does Josh become the player that we see today? So much of your success is dependent on your circumstances. And that's true in life as well. There's no question. I am more impressed by somebody who comes from a middle-class socioeconomic background and ends up being the mayor of their county than I do somebody who's grew up a rich kid, Nepo baby, and ends up becoming a U.S. Senator. I just am. You had to overcome more obstacles. That's what you're seeing with Baker Mayfield. By the way, it was solid in Cleveland looking back. And by the way, the Browns couldn't wait to get him out of the building. And some of that, Baker, to his credit, did some maturing, did some introspection, looked at the areas in which he fell short and said, you know what? How that all worked out in Cleveland, that wasn't all the Browns. That was on me as well. You've seen Baker mature as a leader. You've seen him really galvanize that locker room in Tampa Bay. You've seen Baker take better care of his body. I feel like, again, maybe I'm crazy. I feel like since he's been in Tampa, at least since last year, I've seen an extra level of velocity in some of his throws. He's more mobile. The fourth down play to keep Tampa's drive alive late against Houston, Baker probably doesn't do that in Cleveland. He doesn't have the mobility in Cleveland to be able to do that. And so nothing but credit to Baker for not giving up, for staying, for improving as a leader, for improving his temperament, all of those things. Because the talent was there. There's a reason he was the first pick. He was a Heisman Trophy winner at Oklahoma. He was a great college player. He was able to put it together, get to a great run organization in Tampa Bay, which has been well run for the last 5+ years, really since Brady got there in 2020. Good coaching staff with Bowles, who takes care of the defense, great O-line, weapons, run game. And you look at Tampa Bay today, and you're like, could that team be a legit contender in the NFC? You'll see where I have them in Bryson's best 10. I think they are. I think they absolutely are. They can. Their offense hasn't even hit full rhythm. You see in that game against Houston, who has a great defense, so you got to take that in consideration. But they haven't quite hit their stride yet. Now, they were missing Godwin, Tristan Wirfs, but once they get that unit healthy, they're going to be one of the scariest offenses in football. And Baker Mayfield, to his credit, on this week's edition of Carving Up the Context, where you land matters, and Baker has shown us that, and has shown us some real growth and improvement in terms of what he's done with the Tampa Bay Bucks. Here's Baker after that game-winning drive on Monday night.
Yeah, I mean, similar to what I told you guys last week, in these 2-minute close games, we were not on the right side of things for the past couple of years, and it's good to see that we haven't even played close to our best ball in all 3 phases, and we're still finding ways to win on the road, and that's really important, is to not lose sight of that. We're finding ways to win, but also we do need to get things fixed. Some of these games can make it easier on ourselves and try and put teams away earlier, but this is a good team that we played, so we expected a hard-fought battle, but yeah, it's nice to be on the right side of it.
Listen, so much of Baker's issues in Cleveland was not an ability problem, just like it's not an ability problem, wasn't an ability problem for Sam Darnold in Minnesota, or no, not Minnesota, with the Jets, or Jared Goff his first year with the Rams. But you need the coaching staff. You need a well-run operation around you. Again, unless you're an all-time generational talent, and even still, those guys have some hard things to have to overcome. That's why I've given Dak Prescott so much love, as he's been surrounded by absolute turmoil and chaos in Dallas. And Dak's gotten to the playoffs almost every year of his career, won multiple playoff games, retired Tom Brady, beat a prime Russell Wilson, like all of those things. And Baker, to his credit, has been absolutely phenomenal. I mean, there's no other way to put it. Like, this is a guy who can absolutely be an MVP candidate in 2025. I actually had him before the season, finishing second to Josh Allen. And I think Baker, especially to win an MVP, it's kind of like being a Heisman Trophy winner. Like, you got to have the quote-unquote Heisman moment or MVP moment. Well, Baker, 2 games in, 2 game-winning drives, came up clutch, 4th down play last night or Monday Night Football. So shout out to him. My guy Ryan Flowers, shout out to Ryan in the comments, the host of the NFL Matchups show, which aired last night. Be sure to check it out every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. Ryan says Baker is a steal for the Buccaneers. No question. Based on, what do they pay him now? Like $33 million a year, which that's why I said, like, he's going to get an extension this offseason, because I think he's in year 2 of 3. So he'll go into 2026 with 1 year left in his deal. The Bucs are going to want to extend him. And so we're probably in a situation where Baker is going to make somewhere in the at the very least, 57, 58 mil, somewhere in that ballpark, because the quarterback market's just going up. Dak said it, but it's just going to keep going up as it always does. And especially, a lot of it's going to depend on what Tampa Bay does. They're going to win the NFC South. I like Michael Penix Jr. in Atlanta. I like what they have. Their defense was impressive against Minnesota, but I don't think they have the offensive arsenal that Tampa Bay does, and certainly just the experience of winning that division 5 straight years, which the Bucs have done. Or 4, they've won the division 4 straight years. They've been in the playoffs 5 straight years, but they're trying to win the AFC South, or NFC South rather, for the 5th year in a row. And so if they're in a position where they're the 2 seed, win a playoff game, dare I say, in the NFC Championship game, yeah, Baker's going to get paid. Good point by Ryan. Funny to think OBJ's dad was talking trash about him when he was in Cleveland. Yeah, and and again, that's something that speaks to Baker's growth as well. Because while that's true, let's not do a revisionist history on that. Because Ryan brings up an interesting point. OBJ's dad was putting out videos on the internet like, hey, Baker's missing my son wide open and all these different things. And then Odell goes to the Rams. It's phenomenal. Might have been Super Bowl MVP had he not blown his ACL in the second quarter because OBJ was balling against Cincinnati. And meanwhile, Baker was bombing in Cleveland. So much of that situation, if you think back and remember, locker room, if you remember the reports out of Cleveland, the locker room was on Odell's side. Locker room was on Odell's dad's side. Like, yeah, Baker's missing him. We don't like what we're seeing from in terms of Baker's leadership. Baker grew. Baker improved, just as any smart, intelligent person would do. And so, again, I got nothing but love and respect for Baker Mayfield for this journey he's been on the last few years. And now he is indisputably a top 10 quarterback. You can't argue otherwise. I've seen some people saying he's like top 5, top 6. I wouldn't quite go there yet, but let's see what he does the rest of the season. But he is firmly in that top 10. No questions about it. Somebody else who is in that top 10 range of quarterbacks is Justin Herbert, who led the Chargers to a 20-9 win against the Vegas Raiders on Monday Night Football as well. I did pick the Chargers to win this game. I liked them to cover. I thought it was a situation where there was a little bit of overinflation with Geno Smith and the Raiders, and Geno had a miserable night against the Chargers. Some of that's LA's got a great defense, and some of that is Geno. Kind of a roller coaster. Good starter, led the league in passer rating in 2022, has been to the playoffs before, but generally speaking, Geno's very much an up and down type of player. There's a reason that he bounced around the league before he finally kind of found some footing in Seattle with Pete Carroll, and now in Vegas with Pete Carroll. But the story of the Chargers to me is not just that Justin Herbert's been great, but that Justin Herbert has been asked to take on a bigger role now, at least through 2 games with the Chargers, than he was last year. Remember last year, Herbert had I think 20, in the low 20s, I should have checked, in terms of touchdown passes, only threw 3 interceptions, was really efficient, kind of played a little bit of a game manager role, so to speak. But it was a running football team, was the LA Chargers, with obviously Rashawn Slater up front and Joe Alt. Well, now Rashawn Slater's gone. Now you have Najee Harris, but Najee Harris isn't, fully himself, and if they're going to find a way to be able to work him in the lineup, all of those things. And Justin Herbert's been nothing short of phenomenal. We can show you his numbers. Tied for 3rd in touchdown passes. He has yet to throw a pick. 560 passing yards, which ranks 3rd. 72% completion, which also ranks, ranks in 5th place. Pass rating of 127, which is off the charts. That ranks 2nd in the National Football League. And he's got a QBR of 81, which ranks 3rd in the NFL. I mean, you're talking about a guy who has been efficient. You're talking about a guy who has been really, really accurate. The deep ball, some of those throws to Ladd McConkey and Quentin Johnson, it's like, whoa, that's the zip on the ball. That's the natural talent that I fell in love with when he was at Oregon. This is why I said, but going to that 2020 draft, I thought he was the best quarterback in that class. Burrows ended up being better, but again, knock on wood for Joe. Is it on the board? Up ends up having the better career just because of Burrow's injuries? Because we know Tua is not the guy. I guess Jalen Hurts, you could honestly, looking back, Jalen may end up having the best career just in terms of the structure. He's great in big games, all of it. But Herbert could be in that discussion. He's got the coach in Jim Harbaugh. Looks like the receiving core is better than we thought. Now that they added Keenan Allen back to the mix, now that Quentin Johnson has been vaccinated against the bad case of the drops that he had for the first couple of years of his career, Ladd McConkey, we knew the production he gave you last year as a rookie with the LA Chargers coming out of the University of Georgia. But what's more impressive than anything, the running game hasn't been working for the Chargers, and we can show you the numbers. These numbers are stunning from a Jim Harbaugh coach team. 25th in yards, 28th in yards per attempt, dead last in rushing touchdowns because they haven't run for 1. Jim Harbaugh, Greg Roman, this Charger staff has been like, Justin Herbert, kind of carry us a little bit. Do it against the 3-time defending AFC champion Chiefs in Brazil. A long travel, all of it. Do it on Monday Night Football on the road against the Vegas Raiders, a team that's feeling good about themselves. And he didn't blink. He delivered. Now, the Chargers weren't able to cash in the red zone. Some of those drives kind of stalled. A lot of the fact that Chargers weren't, didn't put up a lot of points in the second half is because Vegas had that, 11-minute drive or something crazy. Blood clock, ended up having to settle for a field goal. And so all those things come into consideration. But I think if you're looking at the Chargers today, you say well-coached defense. They got to get Khalil Mack back from injury. That's huge. If they can just find some semblance of a running game, which it's Jim Harbaugh, I think he's going to figure it out. It's like, do you think Steph Curry's going to find a way to get out of a shooting slump? Yeah, probably. Do I think Jim Harbaugh is going to find a way to get the Chargers running game going? Yeah, probably. The receiving core is better than we initially thought coming in. Tight end plays good. The question at that point becomes, can Justin Herbert play well in a big game? That's been the knock. We've gotten on Lamar Jackson for that. We've gotten on Dak for that. Justin Herbert's played 2 playoff games, which that in and of itself is a knock. Well, he's had bad coaching. A lot of quarterbacks. Do we think Zach Taylor's a great coach? Joe Burrow took him to a Super Bowl and an AFC Championship game. We've seen all those situations play themselves out over the years with the Los Angeles Chargers and with other teams. 2 playoff appearances, the first of which he blew he was the quarterback at least, of a team that blew a 27-0 lead to the Jaguars and a quarterback who I love in Trevor Lawrence. Most of y'all don't even think he's good. He was the quarterback, was Justin Herbert in that loss. And then last year, against the Houston Texans, he had 3 picks in the regular season, 4 picks in the playoff game against Houston, in a game that the Chargers were favored to win. He was the number one reason, bar none, why the LA Chargers lost that game last year. So we all assume, they're the favorites right now in Vegas, I think, to win the AFC West, even over the Chiefs, because the Chiefs, slow started 0-2. I certainly think they'll be in the postseason, whether they win the division or not. Then the questions go to number 10. If you continue this hot streak, if you continue this, Herbert's like an early MVP candidate in Vegas right now. Now we look to you to be able to deliver the goods. Now we look to you to be as accurate and as poised and deliver the deep balls the way you have all career long in the regular season. Receiving core is good. Again, knock on wood for health, but McConkey, Keenan Allen, who's still productive, and Quentin Johnson, who, again, has kind of found his way, to so to speak. You have to imagine the Chargers game, once again, will be a lot better than this with Jim Harbaugh coaching, with that offensive line. Well-coached defense, get Khalil Mack back from injury. They're a contender. They absolutely are. And you'll see where I have them in about 20 minutes or so on Bryson's Best 10. All right, we're going to go to break. But when we come back after 1 minute, my buddy Alfred Parsard Jr. of the Metropolitan Report will be stopping by to talk about his New York Mets. And I'll be honest, I'll probably slip in a Jets question just to pick on him and later in the interview. But Alfred Parsard Jr., Metropolitan Report, coming up in just 1 minute on Carving Up Live. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Carving Up Live. Appreciate everybody stopping by on this Wednesday. Very special guest. It has been what, like a year almost, maybe 2 years since he's been on the show. So it is long overdue. My good friend of the show, here on the Grid Network, the host of the Metropolitan Report podcast. Would you please give a warm welcome back to the show? It is Alfred Parsard Jr. who is stopping by on this Wednesday. Alfred, how are you, sir?
Doing well. Glad to be back. I think it's almost been 2 years.
It's been way too long. That's what I do know, Alfred. It's good to have you on. First of all, listen, the Mets have been struggling as of late. Again, they've won the last couple of games. They're in the midst of a series right now against the San Diego Padres right now. What has been, because this was a Mets team where in mid-June it was, holy crap, not only could they win the National League East, but could they get the number 1 seed in the National League going into the postseason? And since then, they've kind of hit rock bottom, so to speak, and now they're just trying to cling to a playoff spot, hold off the likes of Arizona and Cincinnati. What's gone on as of late that has hurt the Mets more than anything in your eyes?
It's the pitching. Because early on in the season, the Mets hitting was very slow. Back in it is like in the first 3 months of the season, they had one guy that would carry the team on their back offensively, and it was okay. In April, it was Pete Alonso. In May, it was Francisco Lindor, and then in June, it was Juan Soto. But the pitching was solid. And then like mid-June to present, the starting rotation has been bad. The bullpen has been even worse. Our GM David Stearns went out and got 3 relievers at the deadline, which, some people say that there was a super bullpen constructed on paper. I covered it on one of my videos, and you get Ryan Helsley, who was a lockdown closer in St. Louis. The guy had a 3 ERA before he came to New York. He's been bad. Gregory Soto has been bad. Tyler Rogers has been okay, but opposing hitters are hitting 290 off of him. So I don't know. And then the starting rotation, it doesn't help that Kodai Senga has been so bad. They sent the ace of the staff down to AAA. Clay Holmes, who was a closer, and I said this from spring training, I don't know how long you're going to get good productivity out of Clay Holmes. You have a guy who pitched one inning, maybe 20 to 30 pitches max every couple of days to now 90 to 100 every 5 days. He needs an adjustment. So yeah, and Tyler McGill going down hasn't helped. And then the Mets right now are 2 games up in a wild card, but they're resting their hopes on 3 rookies in their starting rotation: Nolan McLean, Brandon Sproat, and Jonah Tong. And that's not fair to the kids. Definitely can't hang your playoff postseason hopes on 3 unknown prospects. So it's been the pitching, because even in the month of August, Bryson, the Mets set records in batting in franchise records, batting average, RBIs, runs scored. And when a team scores 9 or 10 runs and still manages to lose games, that's insane.
And it's demoralizing for the clubhouse, I have to imagine, because if you're a Francisco Lindor, Pete Alonso, Juan Soto, all these guys, you're thinking, man, what else do you need us to do? And the pitching continues to let us down over and over. I was actually going to bring up the fact that the offense was historically great last month, and you brought it up. Again, the pitching has kind of let them down. So again, like I said, in the midst of a series with San Diego, do you think, if you're a Mets fan at this point, coming into the season, again, the signing of Juan Soto, which was kind of the big name free agent on the market last year, signed him to a long contract, one of the biggest, I think actually the biggest in the history of baseball. Are your expectations for this Mets team, given the struggles, given the hot start and now kind of the limping toward the finish line, so to speak, are your expectations the same in terms of postseason success now as they were in March?
Honestly, no, because again, the team fell apart. This is a startling statistic, but 4 of our bullpen guys that started the season on the active roster all went down needing Tommy John.
Ooh.
And I'm talking about AJ Minter, Dedniel Nunez, Danny Young, and Max Kranick. 4 relievers who were actually very good, all succumbing to injuries that required Tommy John. So, I mean, when you rebuild the bullpen with guys who are not promising what's delivered, the starting rotations in shambles. We lost Griffin Canning to a torn Achilles back in June. Again, Tyler McGill, they shut him down. Hopefully he'll come back next year. So and Kodai Senga, who knows if he's going to get brought back up before the postseason. They don't have much time to bring him back up because it's only 10 games left in the year. So while yes, Juan Soto's here, Pete Alonso's different, like, baseball is an all-around team sport. It's a collective effort, and you can't just rely on 3 guys to carry you through night in and night out.
Well, let's talk about Juan Soto for a second on a positive note, because this was a guy who, let's be honest, got off to a pretty slow start to his early Mets career, was getting ridiculed and booed in Yankee Stadium, and Yankees fans like, yeah, I told you, this is why we didn't want him. And it's like, boy, this is revisionist history. You guys were just clamoring. You were falling at his feet, begging him to stay after he helped y'all get to a World Series last year. But I guess Yankees fans have short memories on that. But if you look at Juan Soto this year, 7th in home runs, 6th in OPS. He's had an outstanding offensive season with New York. Has he met your expectations in year one? Is this a guy you're like, okay, obviously Lindor is a guy who's kind of been, well, Pete Alonso's been there long-term. Friend of the show, by the way, friend of the Metropolitan Report, Pete Alonso. Right. Francisco Lindor's been excellent. He had a great postseason a year ago. But now this is the guy who has the highest upside in terms of overall career success in Juan Soto. Have you been impressed by what you've seen? Is this a sign for future things to come where you say, okay, we can go on deep playoff runs with this guy as the face of our franchise?
Well, in regards to Juan Soto, first off, I just like to say hello to every Yankee fan out there that may or may not watch this video.
They'll see it, Alfred.
We would like to thank your scorned ex-girlfriend behavior for motivating Juan Soto, especially you too, Mike Guido. But Juan Soto has surpassed my expectations, and I'll tell you why. You look at his numbers where he currently sits right now. I believe he has 40 homers, over 30 stolen bases. Mind you, this is a guy who before this season, his career high in a season in stolen bases was 12. So wow. The guy went from 12 stolen bases to over 30. He's in the 40-30 club, and I would assume between now and 10 games from now, he's going to get 2 more RBIs to put him over 100. When you get a guy 130 stolen bases, that's almost, I mean, if Shohei Ohtani didn't exist, this guy would probably be MVP.
I think there's no question about it. And that's, I remember when he first signed with the Mets, and I had our mutual friend and diehard Mets. Well, I shouldn't say diehard. You're a diehard Mets fan. It depends on the day with Barry Grant Jr., the host of the All Even podcast. Shout out to him. It depends. Is he chucking his Mets hat outside of his house? Like it really just kind of depends. He's kind of a fair weather fan. I think we would agree on that. Like his loyalty depends on
if they win.
If they win, depending on what the momentum is, obviously just picking on Barry a little bit. But no, let me ask you this. So let's say, because the Mets, I think, would be favored today to get in the postseason as that last wild card team in. Is there a matchup that you sit there and say, okay, maybe they could mess up somebody's season in a 3-game wild card series, and then you get to the NLDS, and who knows? Maybe you could. Again, you upset Philadelphia last year, gave LA more trouble than anybody gave them in the, or I guess the Padres gave them some trouble, but beat them 2 games in the NLCS, and they eventually won the World Series. Is there anybody you say, okay, if the Mets could just draw this opponent, maybe there's a matchup that they could exploit in the postseason this October?
Well, I would love for the Mets and the Phillies to link up because, like I said, we owned them last year in that in the NLDS. Say what you will. These guys are big and bad, but the Brewers, I'm not scared of them either. You saw what we did to them last year. I would even say this: give me the Dodgers. I'm not afraid of them either. I was more afraid of the Dodgers last season, but the Dodgers have stumbled and struggled. They're only 2 games up on 3 now because of last night, but they're only 3 up on the Padres. I'm not afraid of them.
So you don't believe in that championship kind of DNA mentality and none of that?
Listen, when if they dare even trot old man Clayton Kershaw on the hill up against us, he's got a rude awakening coming.
He very well might. I will say, Shohei Ohtani last night, what do you have, 5 hitless innings? I mean, Shohei maybe starting to get that old ace, ace mentality back in him. He's obviously been fantastic. I do want to ask you quickly, just as a completely unbiased and completely objective observer, as you know, Alfred Parsard Jr., who's joining the show. Can the Red Sox make a deep run? And don't say something just to appease me. Say just for the honesty of the audience. Can the Red Sox make any sort of run that would make myself and Tim Barner, the host of the Boston Sports Summit, happy?
The Red Sox have looked good down the stretch, but it's a possibility because even though the Yankees have that first wild card spot, Aaron Judge becomes pretty much a ghost in the postseason. And the Yankees are very contingent on if Judge can't carry us, we don't win. I don't see Toronto as being a threat, even though they lead the AL East, only because they've been in the playoffs consistently each of the last couple of seasons, never get out of the first round. I think there was a couple years ago, 2 years ago maybe, they played the Mariners and didn't get out and got swept after they were up big in one game. So that's a team full of youth, but none of the youth have meaningful playoff experience. And as we know, regular season is a completely different animal than the postseason. I think it's possible. I think that the AL will be more of an open field than the NL will in the playoffs.
Oh, no question. I think everyone kind of knows who the contenders on the NL. It's Dodgers, Phillies, Padres. Like you look at those teams. Even the Cubs and Milwaukee could present some trouble to other teams. Whereas in the American League, I think we kind of came into the season where, especially with Garrett Cole out for the Yankees, it's like, okay, who is the true favorite? And the fact the Yankees obviously lost Juan Soto. So we'll see how it plays itself out. Quick football question, then I'll ask you one more Mets question. You're a Jets fan. And
unfortunately.
long-suffering Jets fan.
Fan and employee.
Listen, you're representing the brand, so to speak, and doing so in a very classy manner. Thoughts on the Jets through 2 games? Obviously, the loss on Chris Boswell's 60-yarder last week against my beloved Steelers. We did not make a bet on that game. Maybe we should have. That would have been maybe some good content for the Grid Network. But this past Sunday against Buffalo, not great. Justin Fields, 27 yards passing. He's concussed. Now Tyrod Taylor's going to start this coming week against the Tampa Bay Bucks. Thoughts on the Jets thus far? You've been critical in my comment section before about Aaron Glenn and Justin Fields. Again, a rough first game as a Jet. Aaron Rodgers comes back to haunt you guys. Like, thoughts of the Jets though so far? You're seeing any positive signs at all?
I will say this. In week 1, Aaron Glenn built up a lot of goodwill amongst the fan base. I could say that. That was a closely contested game. The offense looked really good. Just so happened the play calling, he happened to go for a 2-point conversion in the first quarter because you guys drew a penalty that put us on the 1-yard line. I would have just kicked the extra point. Comes back to haunt you, whatever. Xavier Gipson fumbles. He cuts him to prove a point. Go into week 2. You only have three points up until garbage time, deep in the fourth quarter, after Justin Fields is already concussed. When it's 30-3, for the most part, your starters should be out of the game in the fourth quarter. There's no reason with 8 minutes left in the fourth, you're down 27 points. Your starters, especially your starting quarterback, is still out there. Any coach with a brain would know the game's out of reach. It's still a significant amount of time. We're not going to catch up because we can't stop them. Let's just save our guys for next week. Worry about Tampa next week. Instead, he keeps them out there. Now Justin Fields has mashed potatoes for brains, and we got Tyrod Taylor to lead us against a 2-0 Tampa Bay Buccaneers team that just had a miraculous comeback on Monday Night Football 2 nights ago. I think Aaron Glenn erased any goodwill that he had from week 1 in week 2. Especially because we saw what the Ravens were able. Granted, the Ravens didn't win that game in week 1, but we saw how the Ravens had an easy time with that Buffalo defense for the most part.
Yep.
And for a team that looked good, and I get it, the Bills and the Steelers, 2 totally different teams in terms of their defensive abilities or overall. But for a team that had momentum coming out of week 1 to just fall flat, completely flat, being held to a field goal through 3 3/4 of a game, something's got to change, because just when you think that this is going to be a new look Jets, they somehow revert back to the Jets that everybody's used to.
Let's just say you view the Steelers defense as in a little bit higher regard than I do. I am low on the Mike Tomlin praise train, to put it mildly.
Yeah.
Last question. What's your thoughts on Frankie Montas? Because I know he's out for the year, and this was something that I know upset you greatly.
You know, when they said he was going to need Tommy John and he was going to be out for the rest of the year, for the first time in my life, a player on one of my teams got hurt, and I was so happy to see him gone. Like, you know what they should do to Frankie Montas? I wish I could yell, but he hasn't done anything for me to yell. But we should just ship him in a human-sized wooden crate and just send him to wherever the surgeon is, and just keep him there. Don't even the best part about this whole thing is sad, but it's also the best part. He has 1 more year left on his contract, which is next year. Hopefully he has a setback in his rehab where he doesn't come back, and then after next year we're free of Frankie Montas. Like, I never want to see that guy in a Met uniform ever again. Even when they do the alumni, because they do an alumni game every year. Even in the alumni game, don't bring him back. I don't want to see the guy. Don't bring him back in the alumni classic. Let's just forget that he was ever here.
The human pinata, right?
The human pinata. All he does is get bashed.
Love it. All right, everybody, before you get out, tell everybody where they can find your show, because you are absolutely killing it right now.
Oh, thank you, sir. Metropolitan Report podcast on YouTube. We have 1 live show a week, and then we clip the show and put the most compelling parts into small clips throughout the week. Also on Instagram, _Metropolitan_report. Yeah, and love the feedback I've been getting. Some nasty comments on Juan Soto related material, but other than that, you know what? Before I go, I just want to say I took 2 years off of doing the show, and I'm glad I came back because I'm having a blast now.
Oh, listen, I'm excited to see you back. I'm excited to see how you've blown up the show. And listen, nasty feedback from Yankees fans, sir, is to be expected. It's just part of the job description. And when you do it, we do. Alfred Parsard Jr., Metropolitan Report. Hope to have you on again. Let's have you on again throughout the postseason to talk about everything that's going on. Hopefully, your Mets and my Red Sox are doing something, doing some real damage this October. Alfred Parsard Jr., appreciate you stopping by, my man.
All righty. See you, Bryson.
Alfred Parsard Jr., great stuff as always. Listen, definitely check out his show. I'm not just saying that because he's a friend. Well, I'm partly saying because he's a friend, because he's been very little to me into the show. But Metropolitan Report, anywhere you get your podcast, it's on YouTube. His lives are really, really engaging. He will absolutely interact with you in terms of if you're going to be active in the chat, all of those things. So definitely check out Alfred Parsard Jr. and the Metropolitan Report. He does a fantastic job. He did one video recently of I'd say what? 2-3 weeks ago, something like that, where he was, it was like what an experience at Citi Field is like. And I don't want to spoil the ending, but it's pretty good. It's a pretty good video throughout, showing the experience of being at Citi Field as a Mets fan, amongst Mets fans. So Alfred Parsard Jr., great stuff as always. I'll take the headphones off right now because I don't really need them the rest of the show. Okay, so I do this segment every Wednesday. Do carving up the context midway through. I decided to do it at the beginning of the show. In this case, Bryson's best 10, same schedule as always. And I got to say, lot of turnover, okay? We go into week 3 and already no single team is going to be exactly where they were a week ago. So we've got some turnover. Get the background music, baby. Bryson's best 10. Here we go. Bryson's best 10. Week 3, we will start at number 10, down 5 spots from last week. They have yet to win a game. It is the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs are the 10th best team in the National Football League, and here's why. I'm keeping them in the top 10 for 2 reasons. A, championship pedigree. B, they're not healthy. Right? Like once you get Xavier Worthy back in the lineup, which reports are saying he could be back this week in what is a gigantic game for the Chiefs against the middling Giants. They have to win that game, not just stay in this list, but just stay in contention at all. And then they get Rashee Rice back, obviously, in the middle of October. All of those things you take into consideration. You have to be impressed by what you saw with Kansas City in terms of their ability to stop Saquon Barkley, or at least to limit Saquon Barkley over the course of that game, which is really the only good thing they did in the Super Bowl against Philadelphia in that blowout loss that we obviously saw play itself out last February. Patrick Mahomes has been, again, the numbers don't indicate how well I think he's actually playing, given the pressure he's facing up the middle. There's some real weaknesses at left guard that the Chiefs need to address, maybe in the trade deadline. May have to wait till this offseason to do so. Travis Kelce's drop, again, if Travis does what he normally does, and that's pull in passes from Patrick Mahomes, Chiefs very well might win that game. Instead, Philadelphia bleeds the clock, tush push. We all know how that plays out. I think the Chiefs are going to be fine. They've got the best quarterback in the world. They've got the best coach in the league. Chiefs will be fine long term. They've got to win Sunday. If they don't win Sunday, they're done as contenders in 2025. But I believe in them. The Chiefs are the 10th best team in the National Football League. At number 9, on Bryson's best 10 for the first time this season, welcome San Francisco 49ers. Yes, the Niners are the 9th best team in the National Football League, and I'll tell you why. Imagine how good your offense is, how well coached your offense is, for Mac Jones to step in and do this. Passer rating of 113, 3 tuds, no picks. I mean, and again, I know it's the Saints. You got to take that in consideration. The Saints, in my mind, coming into the season and now, are the worst team in football. If it was Bryson's best 32, the Saints would be at 32. With that being said, Mac Jones, who was inept in New England, particularly those last couple of years, inaccurate, new arm, didn't move well, dirty, bad leadership. He steps into San Francisco with McCaffrey and Juwan Jennings, and that offensive line, Kyle Shanahan, Ricky Pearsall. All of those components, in his favor, balls out. Almost as if Brock Purdy's a little bit more of a system quarterback than folks would like to admit, as I've been saying for the longest time. But I digress. Also, something too is San Francisco. All the guys they've lost on defense over the last couple of years, particularly this past offseason, one of the youngest defenses in football, and Robert Saleh has those guys playing with their hair on fire. Again, the score was closer, and the point total was higher than what you might expect, given that they were playing the Saints. I still think the Niners defense is talented. They've got Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, all of these guys. Saleh's getting the absolute most, squeezing every drop of the juice out of the rest of this group. San Francisco's well coached on both sides of the ball, and if they can win a game with Mac Jones looking like Tom Brady, are looking like, to use a Niners example, Joe Montana. Man, might be a little bit better than I thought. The Niners are the 9th best team in the National Football League. At number 8, up 2 spots from last week, it is the Detroit Lions. The Lions are the 8th best team in the National Football League. And before I tell you why, Dan Campbell, what did your Lions do in dominant fashion against your old employee, Ben Johnson's?
Kneecap.
Boy, were kneecaps been in Ford Field on Sunday, 52-21. Now, some of that is the Chicago Bears' ineptitudes on the defensive side of the ball. Jalen Johnson's out. We know that's going to play itself out. I think Dak Prescott's going to go crazy against Chicago this weekend, but we'll see how that plays out. But listen, if you're a Lions fan, you've got to be thinking, okay, maybe we don't miss Ben Johnson as much. I think that'd be a little bit too much of an overreaction because the Lions are such a dominant team at home at Ford Field. Jared Goff, 5 touchdown passes. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 3 touchdowns. First time in his career that he's done that. But even without Ben Johnson, even with the losses at offensive line, Goff, Gibbs, Montgomery, St. Brown, Laporta, you got this kid Tesla making plays. I think he's just going to get better and better and better over the course of the season. Again, the question is Detroit's defense, and it's been that over the last few years. Aiden Hutchinson's back healthy. He'll get himself kind of worked back into the lineup, get back to full strength. He was out there tearing it up last season before that devastating injury against the Cowboys. So I really like where Detroit's at. I still think they are not the best team in the NFC North, not going to win the NFC North, but I think they'll be a playoff team, and I think they'll make some noise as they have, at least in 2023, in the postseason. The Lions are the 8th best team in the National Football League. At number 7, up 1 spot from last week, it is the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers are the 7th best team in the National Football League, and here is why. I talked about Justin Herbert earlier in the show, talked about the fact that despite the fact that the Chargers have been bottom 10 in the NFL across the board in every major rushing statistic, Justin Herbert has been easily, thus far, one of the 5 best quarterbacks in football. No interceptions. He's been efficient. Completion percentage is high. Pass rating's off the charts. He's using his legs. The arm strength's off the charts. And it looks like the Chargers receiving core might be a lot better than we thought. Partly because Quentin Johnson has finally kind of stepped up his game. Looked like that first round pick in 2023 out of TCU that Chargers fans hoped that he would be. Keenan Allen still got some gas left in the tank. He's still got that connection with Justin Herbert and Lamb McConkey. We know how productive he was a year ago. It's a well-coached Chargers defense. Jim Harbaugh, I've said it for years, is one of the 3 best football coaches, college NFL, that there is alive right now. Chargers, legit threat in the AFC, better than I thought they'd be. I had them as a playoff team coming in. Didn't think they'd look this good. Once they get that running game going, watch out for the Chargers. They are the 7th best team in the National Football League. At number 6, also up a spot from last week, it is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Bucs are the 6th best team in the National Football League, and here's why. They've got a guy who is an early, kind of like Justin Herbert, is an early candidate for the MVP in Baker Mayfield. 2 game-winning drives against a good Falcons defense, which you saw them play well against the Minnesota Vikings. We saw him again in a situation against one of, if not arguably, the best defense in all of professional football in the Houston Texans. Baker, Bucky Irving, Rachaad White finished it off. Mike Evans, Emeka Egbuka. Injuries to the offensive line. No Tristan Wirfs. There's no Chris Godwin at receiver. And so you get the job done in the form and fashion which you did. Tampa Bay's defense is a little bit better than I thought they'd be coming in. Now, I maybe should have anticipated that given that Todd Bowles is a really, really good defensive coach, stable culture in Tampa. Listen, I think the Buccaneers have the potential to be the best offense in football. Once all their pieces are in there healthy, they've got one of the 5 best offensive lines in the sport. I thought they protected Baker, all things considered pretty darn well given the front that they were facing with the Houston Texans, the likes of Will Anderson, Danielle Hunter, and others. So I like where the Tampa Bay Bucs are at right now. They are a serious contender, and they are the 6th best team in the National Football League. At number 5, also up a spot from last week on week 2, it is the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens are the 5th best team in the National Football League, and here is why. I think the fact that they were able to win, again, it's the Browns. The Browns are in that discussion among one of the worst teams in the NFL. We get this. But AFC North, physical, divisional game, like those can get a little squirrely sometimes. And the fact that Cleveland said, we are just going to sell out to stop Derrick Henry. And they did not limit Derrick Henry. They full-blown stopped Derrick Henry. What did he have, like 23 rushing yards? One of the worst games of his career. And Lamar Jackson was nothing short of spectacular. As a matter of fact, passed Aaron Rodgers, partly because of Aaron's struggles as of late and getting up there in age. Lamar Jackson passed Aaron Rodgers as the NFL's all-time leader in passer rating. He also is the NFL's all-time leader in quarterback rushing yards. And this is what he's done. If you look at Lamar's last 20 games, he has been absolutely out of this world great. 57 total touchdowns, 4 picks. Has a 57-4 total touchdown to interception ratio. Almost 5,000 pass yards, over 1,000 rushing yards, 67% completion, and a pass rating of 125. It is a legitimate question if he can get it done in the playoffs. 100%. If he could step up, the Ravens are absolute contender. I still don't know if I trust John Harbaugh to hold double-digit leads. Said that for years on the show, even before the Buffalo loss. They do. Kyle Van Noy, who led them in sacks last year, is going to be out for the time being. So how can they be able to generate a pass rush consistently? They'll have to answer. But the Ravens are a great defensive culture. I think they'll be able to step up to the plate. Baltimore is the 5th best team in the National Football League. At number 4, a 2-0 team that actually fell a spot from last week, and I'll explain why. More so has to do with the 3 teams above them than with them, but it is the Buffalo Bills. The Bills are the 4th best team in the National Football League, and here is why. So again, Josh Allen, as I said in week 1, is a superhero. I thought Josh was fine, or at least his stats would say he was fine. Josh controlled every aspect of that game with his arm, with his legs. James Cook running the football effectively. That O-line just bullied the Jets front in a way that my Pittsburgh Steelers just did not in any way, shape, or form. I still do have major concerns about this Buffalo defense, particularly with the fact that Ed Oliver is going to be out for some time. You say, well, they held the Jets to 10 points. Yeah, it's the Jets. It's a Justin Fields who, knock on wood, is unfortunately concussed. But it's a Jets offensive operation that's a disaster and has been for some time. Can you step up to the plate against the elite contenders in the AFC from an offensive perspective to where Josh Allen doesn't have to drop 40 points just to stay in games, much less win them? But again, offensively speaking, I think Keon Coleman, I've said it all year, or all offseason and coming into the season, is going to have a big breakout year as a true number 1 receiver. You've got Kincaid. I mentioned the run game with James Cook, that offensive line, Deion Dawkins, and others. And Josh Allen was my preseason pick to be MVP of the regular season. Thus far, I think he is the favorite to win MVP. The Bills are the 4th best team in the National Football League. They only fell because of what I saw from the team that jumped them in the spot at number 3, up a spot from last week. It is the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams are the 3rd best team in the National Football League, and here's why. You could say, blowout win over Tennessee. Folks, that game was close in the 3rd quarter before Byron Young makes a play on Cam Ward, and the Rams kind of pull away from there. Like I said on Monday, if you told me Matt Stafford coming into the season, if you told me Matt Stafford was injured in any way or had a back problem in preseason, if you didn't tell me that, would not have known. I thought he moved pretty fine against the Houston Texans. Again, great defense, and I thought he was exquisite against the Titans defense. The connection with Devontae Adams is already there. We know the connection with Puka Nacua is there, and they run the football effectively. Great O-line. Defensively speaking, again, they've got one of the better fronts in football with Jared Verse and with Byron Young. Sean McVay happens to be, the 2nd best coach in football. They're a true legit contender. Listen, I ended up picking Philly to win the NFC, the defending champion Eagles to win the NFC. I may have picked the Rams, I'll be honest, to win the NFC, if not for the concerns I had about Stafford's back. And Stafford is an older player. I think he's 37. He's an old 37 in NFL quarterback years. So will his body hold up? Knock on wood. Hopefully it does. But the Rams are a series contender, and it is going to be a fun matchup when my 3rd best team, Rams, plays the 2nd team, dropping a spot in Bryson's best 10. It is the defending Super Bowl champion, the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles are the 2nd best team in the National Football League, and here is why. Your Eagles fans who've already been killing me for my tush push take, which I stand by, obviously. Bryson, we're defending Super Bowl champions. We have not lost a game in which Jalen Hurts came out intact since week 4 of last year. It's been almost a year since we've lost such a game. How do you drop us? Well, it's quite simple. Eagles fans, you should know even better than me. The offense hasn't been terribly impressive. And by the way, the secondary's kind of gotten burned. Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb kind of cooked you in week 1. You got lucky on some CeeDee Lamb drops. And the fact of the matter is, Tyquan Thornton had just burned Adoree Jackson down the left sideline. Mahomes overthrew him. It ends up hitting him, though, on a long ball, 40 seconds after that. So I do not trust the secondary as of right now. I think there's some things that some kinks that need to be worked out. Again, Vic Fangio is one of the best DCs in football. I trust him to do that. Love Philadelphia's front. Love them. Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, they got some ballers on that side in their front 4, and certainly their front 7 when you include Zach Bond and others. But offensively speaking, I have concerns about Kansas City's secondary outside of Trent McDuffie and Jalen Hurts, who I defended on this show. I think Jalen, right now, it is absolutely fair. Top 5 quarterback based on how great he is in the biggest games when the defenses do take away Saquon Barkley. With that being said, we kind of held Saquon Barkley in check to a degree. I think Saquon had 88 yards, which is below his standard. It was the quietest 88 yards I've ever seen in my life. And outside of one long ball to Devontae Smith, offense couldn't get anything going. I think the fact the O-line protected well against the likes of Chris Jones and that Kansas City front, but those receivers couldn't separate. Is it an A.J. Brown problem? Is it whatever the case may be? I think Philadelphia's still a great team. Don't get me wrong. They're still going to win the NFC East. They're a legit threat to win the conference once again. I just have concerns about the offensive side of the ball. Is it a new OC problem? Jalen playing with, what is this, his 5th different offensive coordinator since being in Philadelphia? Maybe that's, again, some kinks that need to be worked out, some new guys in Philadelphia. The Eagles are the second best team in the National Football League. And that leaves, my sister's going to love this. The best team in the National Football League going into week 3 is the Green Bay Packers. The Packers are the best team in the National Football League, and here is why. So I said it coming into the season, even before the Micah Parsons trade, the Packers were my pick to win the NFC North for this simple fact. I thought we would see the Jordan Love from the second half of 2023, the guy who had a passer rating of 112, down the stretch, getting the Packers from 3-6 to the postseason, than the guy last year who was not that same player because he was injured. This year, passer rating over 120, 4 touchdowns, no picks, absolutely airing it out. Now, the injury to Jaden Reed is concerning in the sense that that's one of their deep threats gone, but guess what? You got Romeo Dobbs and Matthew Golden and Dontavian Wicks and Tucker Kraft. Like, you're still loaded. Josh Jacobs has 10 straight games with a touchdown rush. And on the defensive side of the ball, has Micah Parsons not been just as good as advertised? I mean, we're talking about getting to the quarterback on a consistent basis, leading the NFL, I believe, in pass rush win rate last week against the Washington Commanders, who have a solid offensive line. Rashawn Gary, again, the secondary is better than people give it credit for. That Nixon kid, who's a great kick returner and is developing into a solid corner. I thought he would fill the hole that Jair Alexander left when they moved on from him. Well, he has. It's a very well-coached defense. We know what Matt LaFleur is and who he is in terms of calling plays for the Packers. That they're able to build a lead. Once they're up 10 points, second half, you're in bad shape because then you got Micah Parsons coming 1,000 miles an hour at your favorite quarterback. And then when he kicked the ball back to Green Bay, it's just Josh Jacobs over and over and over. Jordan Love working out the play action, hitting you on a deep ball 30 yards down the field to Dobbs, Golden, or Dontavian Wicks or somebody like that. Packers are excellent. I can't lie. Based on what I've seen, they look like the best team in the National Football League. They do. I'll be honest. And we could show the list right here. Top 3 teams, or so rather top 10 teams going into week 3. From 10 to 1. Chiefs down 5 spots to number 10. Niners weren't ranked last week. They're at number 9. Lions up 2 spots to number 8. Chargers up 1 to 7. Buccaneers up 1 to 6. Ravens up 1 to 5. Bills down 1 to number 4. Rams up 1 to 3. Eagles down 1 to 2. The Packers are up 1 as the best team in the National Football League. We'll be back after the break, but when we do, we've got a big AFC East Thursday night matchup to kick off week 3 between the Dolphins and the Bills. Massive game for Miami to try and salvage this season, which seems to already be going to hell. And as for Buffalo, get off to a 3-0 start. Predict that game after the break on Carving It Up Live. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Carving Up Live. So before we get out of here, I just want to say I'm actually in 10 minutes going to be joining my good friend Tim Barnard of the Boston Sports Summit. So if you want to hear our conversation about my Steelers taking on his Patriots and our shared love of the beloved Boston Red Sox. Tune in for that. I think he's on right now on the Grid Network. I'll be joining him at 7:15 Eastern, 4:15 Pacific time, so literally 10 minutes from now. So definitely be checking that out as soon as I get out of here. Before we go, predictions for Dolphins and Bills, an AFC East clash featuring two teams that have matched up to the playoffs before between Tua and Josh Allen. The funny thing is, I don't know if anyone saw Tua's comments about Josh when they asked about it, and he was like, man, yeah, this guy can do things I've never even dreamed of doing. Again, not verbatim, but it was along those lines. Like, man, I can't do half the stuff that Josh Allen can do. Don't know if I'd have admitted, obviously that's true. I don't know if I'd have admitted that if I was Tua, but I digress. So the Bills in this game are favored by 11.5 points. So Vegas loves Buffalo, although the line did open at Buffalo minus 13.5, so it's come down a whole 2 points. Jalen Waddle is questionable for this game, so as if the Dolphins didn't have enough bad news coming in. Jalen Waddle, we're not even sure if he's going to play. Tua and Tyreek are frustrated. Tua kind of took a tiny shot at Tyreek or his own abilities in terms of throwing the deep ball after the game was over. I don't know how that's going to play itself out. I do know, barring anything off the field, Tyreek Hill is not going to be a Dolphin when this season is over. I predicted that from the jump. Listen, Buffalo's defensive concerns. Ed Oliver's out. Matt Milano's out. Poor Milano's just had all kinds of injury troubles. All those things considered. But I think this is a situation. I think that Dolphins locker room is broken. When you go back to training camp, when you go back to the joint practices, yeah, they don't like to hit. They don't like contact. That's not great. That's kind of an indictment on the head coach, don't you think? Mike McDaniel is kind of floundering at the pressers. Tua is seen as, who's usually as mellow and calm as we see any quarterback, seems to be getting a little bit frustrated himself. I think we're going to see an absolute bloodbath. I'm dead serious. I'm going to take the Bills easily minus the 11.5. I would have taken them at 13.5. 45-17. Yes, that is the final score. Buffalo blows the doors off of Miami, and I think this is a situation where, you can take the music off. I think this is a situation where it's kind of like when Matt Eberflus botched the clock for the Bears against the Lions in that Thanksgiving game. Remember that? Bears were struggling to begin with. Eberflus was in the hot seat to begin with. But then national television against the Lions, 30 seconds left, and the Bears get one play out the rest of the game. So it was a disaster. Eberflus completely botched it. And he gets fired the next day. And I venture to guess, if Eberflus had done that in a Week 9 game, in the 1 o'clock window, that really only the city of Chicago, diehard NFL fans that have Sunday ticket, and fans of the other team would have seen, I think Eberflus probably survives. But it's the difference. It's like the difference between having seeing an affair with your next door neighbor and seeing an affair involving a celebrity. There's just more eyeballs. Same act, just more eyeballs. I think if Miami gets absolutely boat raced, which I think they will, I think it's on the board Mike McDaniel gets fired. I'm dead. I think it's on the board. Certainly not wishing it upon him, but I think it's on the board that I opened Friday's show talking about the firing of Mike McDaniel. I mean, it feels like he is. You can lose games. You cannot lose a locker room. And it appears that he has with the Miami Dolphins. I think the Bills, who have owned the Dolphins really throughout the Josh Allen era, I think are going to take advantage of those internal fractures within the organization. Tyreek is going to be gone before it's all said and done, barring any off-the-field stuff that could interfere with the team wanting to trade for him. We'll see what happens with that. But Mike McDaniel, I think, is the overwhelming favorite not to survive this season as the Dolphins head coach. All right, that is all the time we have for today's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by. As always, be sure to catch Carving Up Live on Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time, right here on YouTube, as well as on X, Facebook, and on Instagram. Be sure also to check out the Bryson Carver Show, which airs on 89.5 The Edge via the TuneIn app. I'll put the link on my IG stories. That's going to air on Friday at noon Eastern to 2 Eastern Standard Time. So 2-hour show. Be sure to check it out this Friday. And obviously, I'll be on this show at 6 Eastern. Want to give a big shout out and thanks to Alfred Parsard Jr. You can check out his podcast, The Metropolitan Report, anywhere you get your podcast. Subscribe on YouTube. Follow him on social media. He does a fantastic, phenomenal job covering his beloved Mets. So definitely check out Alfred. And check out Boston Sports Summit here on the Grid Network. By the way, subscribe to the Grid Network. That is GRYD, the Grid Podcast Network, right here on YouTube, as well as wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe to that. Subscribe to my show. Hit that subscribe button down there. It helps the channel grow exponentially. My guy, Tim Barner, Boston Sports Summit, is airing right now as we speak, and I'm going to be joining him in under 10 minutes at 7:15 Eastern, 4:15 Pacific time to talk some Steelers versus Patriots and about our beloved Boston Red Sox. So stay tuned for that. Have a great week. We'll see you guys on Friday. NFL predictions, Bills, Dolphins reaction, all of the above. The Vol view. I finally get it off my chest. My frustration and my heartbreak after seeing Georgia walk into Neyland Stadium and beat my balls in the fashion in which they did. So stay tuned for Friday. Have a great week, everybody. Stay safe out there. God bless y'all. Peace out. And tune in to Boss Support Summit, baby. We're going to have fun. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube. And be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.